Then on Sports Central, we go for a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 3 matchup between the Washington Huskies and the Michigan State Spartans. Two teams in very different situations looking forward to Week 3. Washington's a team that is built to win right now. This is one of the best teams in the country in my mind. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if this team ended up in the playoff. And they're taking on Michigan State, a team that just suspended Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker may have coached his last game at Michigan State. That just seems like the most likely possibility right now. And so Michigan State facing that uncertainty, this is still a team that's got potential. I mean, they've had a strong start to the season. So Michigan State, definitely a team that's facing some uncertainty, but a massive opportunity for them, taking on one of the top teams in the country in Washington. We'll be over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Washington beat Tulsa 43-10. Two dominant wins so far for both teams this season. You consider Washington, they beat Boise State 56-19 in Week 1. Boise State, not a bad football team, and the Huskies completely dominated them. And then same thing for Tulsa, beating them 43-10. So the Huskies proving that this team is very much alive here in 2023. And Michigan State on the other side just beat Richmond 45-14, obviously an FCS opponent, but they also dominated in Week 1 against Central Michigan. So both teams off to 2-0 starts, but this is definitely the biggest test for both teams so far this season. Games will be on Saturday, September 16th in East Lansing. Michigan State's the home team for this matchup, and kickoff is 5 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Washington by 16, so I think he was like close to a touchdown before the developments of Mel Tucker, but since that happened yesterday, we have seen the spread really lean even further towards Washington, which you also got to consider the Huskies offense against the Michigan State defense that has been promising so far this season, but last year it definitely was not great. That is something that I think is definitely a big factor as well, but the FBI is going with the Huskies as well, 66%. Saw these two teams play each other last season. It was in Seattle, and the Huskies won it 39-28, which it's wild to consider how the tables have turned since then. Michigan State, back in that matchup in Seattle, was very much considered a dark horse contender in the Big Ten potentially, coming off of a great 2021, and Washington, a team that had pretty low-tempered expectations at that point in the season. Now it's completely flipped. Washington is in the situation of college football playoff contender. Michigan State is a team with a lot of uncertainty right now, so it's definitely a lot of interesting storylines heading into this one. Stat comparison, Washington is currently 4th in points per game, 1st in passage game. That's how it was last season with Michael Penix. Obviously, Indiana transfer quarterback who has broke through with Washington. Really, he has reached his potential that we knew that he had at Indiana, just never got to it. And at Washington, he is excelling for sure. 850 yards so far this season, 8 touchdowns, a pick. Not too bad for him. And the rushing game could be better, 100th in the country in rush yards a game, but otherwise a really strong football team here. And as for Michigan State, the thing is about Washington, when you got as strong of a receivers as this team has, McMillan, Odunze, it goes on. Washington, it makes sense for this team to lean on the passing game, the receiving core as much as they are. It's just the strongest part of this offense, and that's really where this team can win the big games. But for Michigan State, this team is defensively pretty strong so far this season, 9th in points allowed. Granted, they have played Richmond and Central Michigan, but overall, this team not too bad in the passing game. Noah Kim, starting quarterback after Payton Thorne, left for Auburn. Kind of a surprise there, but Noah Kim so far so good. And then, of course, in the backfield, you got Nathan Carter, who hasn't been terrible so far, 200 yards and 4 touchdowns on the season. Your recent matches, Washington beat Tulsa, beat Boise State, both dominant wins. And for Michigan State, they beat Richmond and Central Michigan. Your key points for this one, Washington 2-0. And Michael Penix is quickly emerging as a potential Heisman contender, which if you consider maybe his last year at Indiana, that seemed like that was kind of out the window. But last season, he broke through. This season, it's been great so far. This is an offense that is brutal to stop, and that's really going to be an issue for a lot of teams this season. But the Pac-12, the Pac-12 has got 8 teams ranked in the top 25 right now. That is insane to me how the Pac-12, a conference that's usually been known for being pretty mediocre, definitely behind the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10, but the Pac-12 is the second best conference in college football this season. And honestly, you maybe can make an argument for the top, but the SEC with Georgia, Bama, even Bama lost, but I mean LSU, etc. I think that Washington in the Pac-12 is brutal, and so it's going to be tough to really stand out in the conference. But I'd be stunned if we didn't see the Pac-12 team, or maybe even two, in the college football playoff this season. And I think Washington, the way this team is complete, they are built to win right now. I mean, this is a really strong roster, which it's going to come down to the big games. And once this team is facing off against USC and Oregon, that's really where we're going to learn a lot about this team. But the Huskies could win it all. I definitely think I am definitely a bit higher on this team in comparison to some. I've got Washington ranked number 6 this week. I think this offense and this team is definitely one of the best in the country. Michigan State on the other side. Mel Tucker suspended. What a storyline that is emerging to be. Obviously a questionable future now for Michigan State. That really is, that puts a big dent on this team's hopes this season. Obviously, I mean, it's really tough to focus on the game when you got those coaching issues going on in the background. But, I mean, this is a team that as a whole has shown promise in the first 2 weeks. Noah Kim and this offense is going to need an incredible game, though. This defense will need to come to play in this matchup if they want any chance of beating Washington. I mean, you got to keep it at least somewhat close. I mean, Washington is a team that's easily going to be able to score 30, 40 points on most teams this season. So, I mean, if you can keep it as low scoring as possible, slow them down, that's going to be the key factor for Michigan State. And also maybe force a couple of turnovers, get some points off of turnovers. And that's honestly the Spartans' best shot. But they do have home field advantage, which will help. But obviously taking on a Washington team like this, I mean, it's not going to be easy either way. So with that, let's get to the prediction for this matchup. Washington and Michigan State coming up here in week 3. And in the end, Washington, they're just the better team in this matchup. I'm going to go with them 38-24. I think Michigan State puts up a few points. I do think they hang around for a while. But Washington, just the better team. This offense, I think, scores enough points to get it done in the end, and they win this game by a couple of touchdowns. I'm going to say 65% towards the Huskies, over-unders 58. I'm taking the over for this one for sure, especially if it stays at 58. I mean, Washington is more than capable of scoring more than 38 in this matchup. 38 points might honestly be a bit conservative for predicting how many points the Huskies are going to get here. But I do have Michigan State scoring 24. I think that they still put up some points. Washington's defense, I mean, that is something to note as well, is that Washington's offense is incredible, but their defense can be a bit vulnerable, and I do think we'll see that throughout the next few weeks once this team is taking on some better teams. And hopefully by the end of the season for the Huskies, this defense will be strong enough where they can win some, maybe even make it to the college football playoff and give themselves a chance. But as of right now, I do want to take Washington 38-24, but definitely want to keep an eye on. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And who do you think is going to win this one? And stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.